Thank you for tuning in to This Week Explained, the intelligence-based geopolitical podcast that keeps you informed about the world around you. We are grateful for your support and appreciate you being a part of our community of informed listeners. We would love for you to share This Week Explained with your friends, family, and colleagues. Together, we can make a difference by sharing knowledge and fostering meaningful conversations. So, what are you waiting for? Help us grow our community by sharing This Week Explained with your loved ones.
My bulky blender was such a pain to use, I ended up hardly ever using it at all. But the BlendJet 2 portable blender makes blending so easy and convenient, I use it just about every day. BlendJet 2 is portable, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita on the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. BlendJet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. It lasts for 15 plus blends and recharges quickly via a USB-C cord. Best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap and you're good to go. With over 30 plus colors and patterns to choose from, there's a BlendJet 2 to complement just about any style. I absolutely love the Lisa Frank edition. What are you waiting for? Go to blendjet.com and grab yours today. And be sure to use the promo code Analytics12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of BlendJet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. Blend anytime, anywhere with the BlendJet 2 portable blender. Go to blendjet.com and use the code Analytics12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Shop today and get the best deal ever.
You are now listening to This Week Explained.
Hello, and welcome to This Week Explained, the independent geopolitical podcast that tackles all the major global events. We're glad that you're here with us as we bring you all the insights and analysis on what's happening around the world. As always, I'm Tiana, and Kervin is here as my co-host, and together we'll try to help you understand the complexities of our dynamic, ever-changing world. But real quick, before we get to the rundown, it looks like our pal Caleb from Canada started a trend because we've gotten several lovely, encouraging messages through Spotify since he did that, and we gave him a shout out, which we are grateful to you, Caleb. Yes, we were talking about you, my friend. We were talking about you, and yeah, Carvin, I know you probably got something.
So Caleb sent another message saying, he was like, were you guys talking about me? I don't want to seem like I'm being forward or anything. So yes, Caleb, we were talking about you. We also got a message from Cole P. Not Cole, who's been on the podcast, Alcon.intel, but friend of the show, Cole P. Sent another amazing message through Spotify. We just really appreciate these comments. It lets us know that you guys are engaged and listening, but it also helps us because honestly, we're just talking into the ether between each other. So we don't know if it's resonating with anyone.
Or reaching, I mean, we have listeners, but
we see the numbers. We don't see exactly who is listening, but we can see where you guys are listening from.
So it's nice to put a name to a listener and be able to interact with them. And receiving all these lovely messages just reminds us, why we do this to begin with. We know that your feeds and your televisions and your phones are just overly saturated with all these different media and news companies that are trying to push out what they're trying to sell, and it's nice to know that you're coming to us, our little humble little tiny baby-sized podcast for your news.
Still independent, still planning to be independent in the future. We don't want money from big corporations going out there.
Because then they'll get to start telling us what to do, and we don't listen. We don't take too kindly to that.
Yeah, so if you are a corporation trying to get us on your network, it's going to be a tough sell because I'm going to say what I want to say.
Right.
Anna's going to say what she believes. You're not going to be able to change that. But I do want to say that you guys would trust us to give you a balanced view of geopolitical events. There's just no words to express our gratitude. And
that's what we're going for, and we're glad that you kind of feel the same way we do. Yeah.
So if anybody else has comments to send out, you could send it through Spotify.
Even critiques. Let's say that too. Yeah. We're fine with critiques too. We take critiques, and we also take other ideas, like if there's a subject that you want us to cover more of.
We definitely will.
Yeah. That's what we're here. We're here for people who want all the world news kind of simplified and not filled up with a bunch of fluff, not positive fluff, bad fluff, just filled up with a bunch of crap. I don't know.
Yeah, and if you think we got something wrong, we always say, send a message out. I want to see what you have, the information that you have, so that I can maybe make a more informed analysis of the situation.
Right. So if you do on a later podcast want to hear your name or get a shout out from us, feel free to send us another positive message. I can tell you something right now. It's pretty good for the ego.
Yeah, it's good. and we'll do a really good job of responding to all of those.
We want to interact with you guys. We want to have engagement. We don't want you to feel like we're just talking heads that don't really respect what your views are, because that's not. We want to hear from everybody, pretty much.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyways, thank you again for to Cole and to Caleb for those very sweet messages. We got to get to what's going on. So, Kervin, what's on the agenda this week?
All right. As always, we got two conflicts going on right now. We've got Russia, Ukraine,
always,
and Israel-Hamas. Those are the big two. Also, we're seeing an increase in U.S. bases in the Middle East getting attacked. Staying in the Middle East, China actually sent their own naval ships to the Middle East.
Whoa.
With that having happened, China's also said that they're willing to cooperate with the United States to make the two, to have a better relationship with the U.S. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
And then I wanted to get to, since last week we talked about how terrorism is back. It was always there.
It's never actually been gone.
Yeah, so I'm sure some people are listening, and they might be a little worried about what the next terrorist attack may be, or if there will be one. We're going to talk about that at the end of the episode. What to look for, and maybe even how to protect yourself in that situation.
Well, let's get right into it. What is the latest coming out of Ukraine?
Yeah, this might be the only place you're going to hear Russia-Ukraine information, because that's kind of been pushed back.
Yeah,
Israel-Hamas.
Still on the forefront.
Yes, for us, we're still following it.
Right.
Right now, Ukrainian forces are really pushing back against Russian advances. They've made some notable progress near Bakhmut and in western Zaporizhzhia. The latest geolocated footage shows advancements, so they're definitely on the offensive, even though we talked about that sludge of the autumnal months slowing them down. That's not right now.
Well, that's encouraging news for Ukraine, but now Russia seems to be switching things up with its drones. What on earth is going on there?
Yeah, they really are mixing things up. They're using these new drones called Italmas, and that's alongside what we believe are the Iranian-given Shahed drones. Now, these Italma drones are cheaper, they're lighter, they're harder to detect. So they're really expanding their drone arsenal right now, and they're using those especially for striking Ukrainian infrastructure.
Do you think they started using the new drones because Iran's busy with other things right now, and they're not getting the drones they need?
Yeah, they're definitely missing out on the increased arsenal of drones that Iran has, because Iran's having to use those with Hezbollah and Hamas to attack Israel, which that's what Iran's main goal is: destroy Israel, and, move the Israelis out of the Middle East.
And also burn bridges with the West. They didn't want any Arabic countries forging relationships with the West.
Correct.
Okay. Well, besides being harder to detect and, obviously that makes them more difficult to shoot down, what other advantages does ITAMAS?
Yeah,
ITAMAS. I was going to put an accent somewhere.
I did the first time, so go for it.
Okay, so what other advantages does the ITAMAS drone have to the Shahed drone?
Yeah, there's a few things. So one's a reduced payload. So I'm going to say what a payload is, just if anybody's confused. A payload is anything added to the device. So the camera, that's a payload. Your munitions, if you're going to put a missile on it, that is a payload. So that you would see, that's a disadvantage. It can't have as much of a payload, but it can also be an advantage. These drones can be used for lighter, more precise missions, mainly reconnaissance. So you're going to see a lot of camera stuff. And then the targeting of specific smaller objects. Like I said earlier, they're cheaper to make. So when they're destroyed, it's less strain on the military's finances. But they also provide easier logistics. So the smaller size, lighter weight make them easier to transport and deploy, which can be particularly valuable in a faster-moving military operation.
So where are these drones from?
They are made in-house. Those are their own.
Those are their own? Oh, okay. It kind of sounds, because I remember a couple months ago you were discussing those drones at the defense conference that you went to. The
swarm drones.
Yeah, the swarm drones. So it's not like that. It's just like a step up from it, or?
It's not as much of a swarm drone. I wouldn't say it's a step up. I'd say it's a step down.
I just meant like as far as like size goes.
Yeah, so they're a little bit bigger than what you would see for the swarm.
Like a swarm.
They call them it's almost this like lawnmower. So it's like to mow down enemies. It kind of can be a swarm, but what's considered a swarm is probably more like dozens and dozens of drones swarming into an area, where these are more like, 10 to 15 at a time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, so is there anything else going on in that conflict right now?
No, those were the two big things. And I wanted to get both sides, what Ukraine and Russia are doing.
Well, we all appreciate that. You got to get both sides. So anyways, obviously the other conflict going on right now is Israel and Hamas. And we are going to start off discussing this topic by covering the humanitarian aspect. We heard that some aid has finally made its way into Gaza, but hospitals and the population are still struggling. Could you break down that situation for our listeners?
Yeah, so honestly, in all the discussions online, I do feel like the humanitarian aspect kind of gets overlooked. It's not that people aren't talking about it, because they are. There's civilian deaths and people are outraged, but it's just the way that they talk about it. It's solely based on their worldview.
Right, whether or not this is a good thing or... never mind. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Can you explain what you mean by that? You explain it. I'm not going. I'm not touching
No, sure. And yeah, we've discussed this before. It's an interesting thing for me. And listen, when we say things, that doesn't mean this is everyone or it's the truth all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I can usually tell what side you're going to be on based, especially on your social media bio.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's like a ton of American flags or it's like a pro-military account, it's probably going to post things like Hamas should be destroyed and Israel has a right to defend itself.
Right.
And then on the flip side, if the bio has like, oh, I'm anti-capitalist or I'm pro-socialism, or so Zionism is a key term that Hamas is using as an anti-Israel term, but you'll see that in a lot of like pro-Palestinian accounts. They'll use that. And those are the posts that They're going to say Israel created this conflict and Israel shouldn't exist.
That's
All of that distracts from the fact that the situation of the people on the ground in both Israel and Palestine remains dire. Now, although some humanitarian, I cannot say humanitarian today.
you cannot.
Frustrating me.
You've got a tongue tie or something.
But humanitarian aid has started trickling in very slowly. It's been a slow process. But like you said, those hospitals have been sounding the alarm about potential shutdowns because they have fuel shortages. They need basic supplies like water, medicine, and food. Those are running low.
Well, that's a major gut punch to hear about the plight of the people in Israel and Palestine, of course. Now, if we are going to talk about humanitarian actions, let's talk hostages. An 85-year-old Israeli hostage recently shared her ordeal. Can you provide some insight into her story and the broader context of these abductions? Because I know people were kind of running their mouths about this woman, saying that she sat there with her captors and drank tea and had conversations with them. She was trying to survive, people. Yeah.
And
like, what the heck?
That is what I want to focus on. I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh my! Like, it infuriated me. I would be sitting there drinking tea. I wouldn't be acting out. Like, people want to survive. It's just innate. We all want to survive. We're going to do what we need to survive. And in situations like that, of course, you're going to, if they're nice to you, you're going to be nice back while to not antagonize them.
Yeah, and let's make it clear, this is a civilian. This is someone that does not have counter hostage training. So within the military, every time I deployed, I got training on what to do in a situation that I was kidnapped, right?
Right.
And there are certain things as a military member that I am required to do during these situations.
You've done some SEER training too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've had to go through SEER training. Not that it's bad, not that the training is bad. It's just very difficult, and it's a strain on your body and your mind, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
But she didn't get this stuff. She's 85 years old.
Right. But they're running their mouths talking trash about this woman, and it's like, you have no idea what you would do. You would be doing the same thing, probably, because you want to survive.
Yeah, and if you did something opposite, you may have your head chopped off.
And if you did something opposite, also, people should be able to understand that, too, because honestly, you don't know. Maybe you will act out and try to go after them. But, I mean, that's how she decided she was going to try to keep her life.
And good on her, honestly.
Right. You got to do what you got to do.
I would be proud of her if that was, my grandmother or something, the way that she interacted with the people and kept kindness in her heart. And so, yeah, she was one of the hostages taken in the October 7th. I want to be very clear. October 7th, terror attacks carried out by Hamas.
Right.
Those are terrorist attacks that were carried out not by Palestinians, but by what I consider a terrorist organization in Hamas. And we should be very clear on that. When we talk about these things, we're talking once again about governments and about terrorist organizations and not the people just going about their everyday lives trying to
live their lives. They did not want this conflict. I mean, I'm sure some, obviously Palestinians have
Israelis and Palestinians have
both. Yeah, and
they butt heads. As someone who went through, the Arabic course at DLI, and part of it was a history of, Middle Eastern history. This has been going
of
on.
Middle Eastern history. Was that the title of the book?
Yes, that was. I wrote it. ChatGPT did the title, and then I wrote the book.
Okay.
But yeah, she was released, and also another elderly hostage was released, and that brought the total to, at this time that we're talking about, we're at 4 freed hostages.
Well, why do you think these were the 2 hostages that were released?
So I based this on my analysis and in prior experience in hostage rescue operations. So it appears that Hamas has released hostages as a strategic move to improve their public image. These specific hostages were likely chosen for release due to their age. That's the number one consideration. Hamas cited humanitarian reasons and the need for medical attention. So older individuals obviously are more vulnerable. Hamas wants to avoid fatalities among the hostages that would really take down their public image. Sorry, what?
They murdered babies.
Yeah, well,
and
you have to understand it's a terror organization.
Well, I get that. So why is this suddenly a no?
Because
we can't kill hostages. We can just kill babies and behead them and throw them in a pile.
So all the actions that happened during October 7th, not the planning, but the people carrying out, some of the people carrying out that attack they did it full on emotion. So there was no strategic or logistical. So if it's like a military, this is the difference between a terror organization and a military.
They're very mad. They're very mad at Israel.
Yeah,
so
very mad at Israel.
Okay.
But there's not this like connection to the organization. Like in a military, you do something wrong, you're going to get in trouble. In a terror organization, you're just terrorizing people. So if you end up killing some civilians, that's okay for you. That's not okay from a military sense. If you're talking about, a military that follows the Geneva Convention. So now we have them stepping back a little bit and going, hey guys, we really screwed up. We're going to need to fix our image with this one.
Yes. Okay, that makes a lot of sense then.
So
that makes a lot more sense.
And Gary Nessner would tell you, this is kind of the things that a hostage negotiator would ask for. Hey, can you send out some hostages, right? And the people that would be sent out would be either sick or elderly people. Because as someone taking hostages, you don't want anyone dying unless it's by your own hand, unless you've made the decision.
But also you want people that are useful.
Yeah.
And not a strain on your already, dwindling resources.
Right. So you want to prevent the spread of illnesses within the hostage group because that's going to take more resources because it could lead to an epidemic among all hostages.
And also the medicine and food that you have, you want it to go towards your soldiers or whatever and not go towards someone who is basically unable to fight or
provide for themselves.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know how those people's mobility is. And, they probably can take care of themselves.
Yeah, but I mean, it's an 85-year-old woman.
I know.
Not to say anything about that, but compare that to a 25-year-old woman. Right. You're going to put more resources towards an 85-year-old than just having a bunch of 25-year-olds. So that went into the decision-making. And this decision honestly aligns with their broader strategic goals.
Well, let's get to Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who has expressed his concerns regarding Hezbollah. Can you explain what's going on there?
So Herzog's statement highlights the delicate balance in the region. Israel says they don't seek a conflict with Hezbollah, but tensions have escalated in northern Israel due to the recent hostilities. So there's a real fear that the Gaza conflict could spread regionally. And I was recently asked for my analysis of the likelihood of a regional conflict spreading, and I put it at a possible, which those of you who listen know, for my analysis, that puts it in the 25 to 50% range. Now, that's my assessment right now, but I think it could change quickly depending on Hezbollah. So if Hezbollah moves into Israel, if they do a ground invasion into Israel, I'm going to bump that number up and it's going to become a probable. We're going to get into the 75 to 100% range.
Well, shifting our focus to the hospital attack from last week, U.S. intelligence officials say they have examined the explosion at that Gaza hospital. Can you help us understand the details and the implications of their findings?
Of course. So U.S. intelligence assesses that I should make it clear. I'm not a part of U.S. intelligence anymore. I do my own private intelligence. So this is not my assessment. We can get to that later if you want.
Okay.
But U.S. intelligence assesses that the hospital blast was not caused by Israel, but rather by a Palestinian rocket.
That misfired.
Okay. Let's bring everything into it. Israel is an ally of the United States, so it would be highly unlikely that U.S. intelligence would put the blame on Israel.
Yeah.
But they also probably wouldn't be public about it if they thought it was Israel.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't mention it at all.
Yes. Those are the comments that you hear. I can neither confirm nor deny the information which is what we're told to tell journalists all the time. Now, those officials express and they do a different one. I do possible, improbable, and unlikely. They have a high confidence in their assessment, so that puts it up into the 75 to 100% range. They are, however, less certain about which Palestinian group was responsible. Was it Hamas or was it the PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad? This revelation has sparked skepticism. Wow. Sorry, guys.
You can't say skepticism.
Or humanitarian.
Or humanitarian. Oh, you did. Congrats.
Yeah, so there is some skepticism, got it that time, and there's some questioning of the narrative, obviously, because U.S. intelligence and Israel as an ally. Now, the U.S. intelligence community's analysis is said to be grounded in physical evidence, open source videos, and the characteristics of the actual explosion.
Well, I have two questions here. Has your assessment changed on who is responsible? And based on the U.S. intelligence assessment, can you provide some context on the performance of Palestinian rockets and what led to the hospital explosion? I said two questions, but there were many layers in there. So
two questions, but there are onions. Those questions are onion questions.
We have onion questions.
Lots of layers to it. Let's start with where I stand. And make no mistake, I read this, I look through this every day, unfortunately, for myself and for Tiana, because I have to talk to her about it.
No, it's fine. We've got to keep up with what's going on in the planet, sir.
There was the meme, I think, that friend of the podcast, Miranda, posted about I think I posted this.
She is not just a friend of the podcast, so...
She's family.
Yeah, watch it.
But it was like, hey, how do you open source intelligence guys sleep at night? And it was like, we don't. Yeah. You're always watching this. And I posted that and she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But really, I mean, I do get sleep, but I am reading this every day and it does affect.
He gets more sleep than I do.
I do. And I have to. Otherwise, we couldn't do this podcast.
Oh, well. I need sleep too, you punk.
Oh. I'll try to help you with that.
No, I just can't sleep ever. It feels like it's getting worse.
I know.
Personal problems, move on.
Third world, or not third. Oh my goodness.
First world, what is wrong with you today?
I mean, sleep is an all world problem, right? Okay, back to the seriousness of the analysis of the situation. So after looking through all the evidence, I kind of agree it was most likely a failed rocket. I think it was PIJ, honestly. So these rockets have a notable failure rate. They often miss their intended target because they don't have a lot of money, and so they get cheap equipment, and they use that cheap equipment. So in this case, it appears that what happened was and this happens to drones as well, so I know a lot about this, a catastrophic motor failure that led to the separation of the rocket motor and the warhead. So the rocket motor kept going, the warhead went down, and the warhead landed in the hospital compound, resulting in that explosion that we all saw. That's the analysis that I've seen through videos, through audio recordings during the time that it happened.
Even through the fake edited videos that were pushing different narratives, or
I'm not looking at videos that were I don't want to say that we're edited because you just don't know if the video was edited, but I'm looking at live video coverage. So Al Jazeera was live when it happened.
That makes sense. That's actually really smart. Not you know, watching just a clip of something on a news show. You're watching the live stream of something instead.
Yeah, and I would really caution against like watching a YouTube video with a guy explaining things and showing the video. Those are heavily edited. And if you go into that person's account, you can find their biases and you can say, okay, these are pro-Israel, so they're going to have this bias. These are pro-Hamas, they're going to have this bias. So I scrub all of that information.
Just do the live stream.
I do live stream. And there were a few news organizations that were live in Gaza at the time that it happened that were reporting.
Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera is the main one. You can go find that video. And then you can direct that if you can do geolocation. So I was an imagery analyst. We do geospatial, or we do a lot of analysis of geolocation. And so if you look at that, look at where the rocket came from, look at where it fell down, you can kind of see that it came from Gaza towards Israel, warhead landed, and it exploded.
Okay.
Now, I also want to note the original death toll, and this is why I think, and even the New York Times came out and apologized. News organizations need to stop just quoting Hamas officials or quoting Israeli Defense Force officials and taking that as gospel.
Yeah.
Because usually those numbers are skewed. And in this case, Hamas said that there were 500 civilians killed. That's the first reporting that came out. Everyone was in an uproar. That number has since been lowered with some, I want to say, official accounts. So these are official accounts of the situation, putting it between either 50 or 300. They're lowering that number to the 150, I think.
Okay.
Which is, listen, that is still a tragedy. One civilian killed is a tragedy.
Obviously. And if you don't feel that way, you don't need to be listening to our podcast.
Yeah, that's true. Or maybe you do, and maybe we can change your mind on that. But I do not condone any civilian deaths. So if you say, well, what about Israel killing civilians? I'm not condoning that. I don't.
I'm not condoning that either. We don't want that to happen either, guys. So that, like, heartbreaking doesn't even begin to cover it. Let's
move
down
on from that.
Yeah, but we still have to stay in the Middle East and talk about the increase in U.S. military bases being attacked in the region. You need to let us know and our listeners know, what is the latest going on there.
Yeah, you're correct. There's been a significant increase in attacks. So I believe as of today, the count is at 7 known attacks on military bases in the Middle East.
Brazen.
And recently, the Pentagon released the total number of injured from a drone attack last week. There's a lot of speculation because the Pentagon wouldn't put it out. So can I just talk through the Pentagon's thinking just for a second?
Put what out?
They wouldn't put out the number of injured or death or casualties.
Okay, so please let us know what you think the Pentagon...
Well, a lot of reporting from some people was that the Pentagon was trying to hide that any U.S. military was injured because they didn't want to get into a conflict. Listen, that's not how the Pentagon works. When a service member is injured or killed, they first have to contact all of their family or they have to contact their next of kin. They have to make sure before it gets into the media that they know the situation, they know exactly what happened, and then they can release the numbers. So the media is going to get the numbers out there first. Those numbers are probably going to be higher, and they're probably going to be not accurate. So once the Pentagon has taken all those numbers, they will then release it. So that's what they did there. And they released the total number of injured to 24 American military personnel wounded in those drone attacks. And those were American bases in Iraq and Syria.
And do you know who is carrying out or facilitating these attacks?
So I'm glad you asked facilitating, because the White House claimed that Iran is actively supporting these attacks through Iranian.
Iran does is facilitate things.
Sienna's
They stand on
getting
the
it.
sideline. They stand on the sideline and they're like, "We did that, but
Yeah,
no, we didn't. Oh, we did that."
This isn't just about a handful of isolated incidents. It's part of
Right.
a larger pattern. So the U.S. has pointed to Iran's support for groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. That adds to the complexity of the situation. So as for who claimed to have carried out the attack, it's a new coalition of armed groups called the Islamic Resistance of Iraq. And they released a statement taking credit for that drone attack.
So, what do you know about this group? Because I've never heard of this group before.
Yeah, and it's the Islamic resistance in Iraq is not a single group. It's rather a generic term used to describe the collective operations of various Iran-backed militias in Iraq. It serves as an umbrella brand for these militias, allowing them to coordinate and launch attacks against U.S. troops in both Syria and Iraq. And they would do that under this unified name now, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. The unity helps obscure the identities of the specific groups involved. It's worth noting that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard likely plays a role in coordinating these attacks. They likely played a role in coordinating the attack with Hamas into Israel. The goal is to present a unified front during attacks on U.S. interests and to avoid accountability for specific actions, because that means if, oh, hey, Iran did it, we're at war with Iran because they're attacking U.S. soldiers.
Right.
So the generic branding reflects a larger strategy by Iran to operate without this clear, attribution.
Well, that's a pretty robust update. So, for the sake of time, let's move to what China has been up to these days and start with the fact that they have moved ships to the Middle East. Can you explain the intention there and what that means for global security?
Yeah, so we're seeing now reports suggesting that China's People's Liberation Army has deployed up to 6 warships in the Middle East, and this is because of the rising tensions from the Israel-Gaza conflict. This includes advanced destroyers from the 44th Naval Escort Task Force. They've been stationed there for a while, but they've moved closer to where U.S. military ships are. So this task force has been in the region since May. They arrived in Kuwait. That was after a visit to Muscat, which is Oman's capital. They even conducted joint exercises with Oman's Navy. So the intriguing part is how this could all tie into their growing role, because they're usually focused on the Indo-Pacific.
Well, has China publicly supported either Israel or Palestine in this conflict? Or do you think they're going to sit this one out and focus on the Indo-Pacific and where the U.S. is placing their naval ships?
Yeah, great question. President Xi reiterated that China has a long-standing support for a sovereign state of Palestine as a fundamental solution to the regional conflict.
I understand that completely.
Right. So this is a sign of China's increasing involvement in Middle East affairs. And so you'd ask if they were going to sit it out and focus on the Indo-Pacific. So this is a move away from just the regional power dynamics. Now, why would they do this? The Middle East plays a pivotal role in global geopolitics. So the fact that China is doing this could have significant implications.
Well, what do you think the long-term objectives of China's increased naval presence in the Middle East, what do you think that their objectives are?
Yeah,
what could they be? I mean,
so for China, it's all about resources, right?
Okay,
That's
chips and stuff.
Yeah, that's what we talk about in Africa. They're really increasing their role in Africa, and it's just to capture those resources. Same for the Middle East. The Middle East is rich in resources. Obviously, energy, right? Oil, natural gas, and that's vital for China's economic growth. So by increasing its naval presence in the region, China's not only protecting its interests, but it's also enhancing its diplomatic and economic influence. Even more so, it allows China to maintain a global presence. That aligns with its ambition to be a world superpower. As China's economic interests expand, so does its need to protect those interests, and the Middle East is a key arena for this.
Well, how is the United States likely to respond to China's growing presence in the Middle East? And what impact will this possibly have on the larger geopolitical scape that we have going on here?
So I think the U.S. is going to take a cautious approach to China's actions. This is especially crucial in light of the potential for an isolated regional conflict to escalate into a global war. That's an outcome that neither China nor the U.S. desires. So the deployment of military assets by both of those superpowers just kind of underscores the delicate balance of power, but it also shows the interests in the region. So there's competing interests in that region. And given the global consequences of an inadvertent military incident, I think both superpowers are going to exercise caution in their interactions.
And so this kind of coincides with the next topic, which is the recent statement by China that they are willing to work to improve relations with the U.S., which sounds super positive, right?
Right.
So how do you see this statement? And could we see what was once deemed improbable? A friendlier relationship between the U.S. and China? I mean, one positive.
Can we get a geopolitical positive?
Out of all this global strife, maybe it'll push us together.
Yeah, and we know, all of our listeners know, the U.S.-China relationship has faced multiple challenges. One key factor has been China's increasingly assertive foreign policy. This is, in particular, the territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas. So the Chinese government's pursuit of control over these areas and its ambition to, quote, reunify with Taiwan have raised concerns internationally. So I see the statement as a way for China to kind of cool tensions between the two countries before their intended reunification of Taiwan. And that could allow China to kind of fly under the radar a bit.
Not here.
No.
No, we're keeping an eye on you, China.
Yeah, we are.
Doesn't matter how good you're pretending to get along with the United States. We're watching you.
Yeah, we didn't believe Putin when he was at that long table telling all the people that, hey, we're all the global leaders. We're not going to invade Ukraine. Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Listen, on this podcast, if you're the president of a country, we don't take you at your word.
True.
I think all of our listeners agree with that. We like facts and logic. I want to go on the flip side of this because China still believes the U.S. has played a role in escalating tensions because the U.S. is reinforcing its Indo-Pacific alliances. We've talked about the AUKUS Pact, Australia, the UK, the U.S. Also, the U.S. is engaging in what China perceives as containment strategies. What I mean by that is they are focused on the Philippines, and they're focused on those, the islands within the Indo-Pacific, New Zealand. They're trying to contain China so that they don't invade Taiwan. So both sides have been blaming each other for their aggressive approaches. I don't think that we're going to see friendlier relations because this mutual distrust has further fueled the rivalry.
Right.
So that, I don't see an amiable relation happening in the future.
So they're just saying that it's a possibility, but you don't actually believe that they genuinely want to forge a relationship with us.
No, I think it's a tactic to kind of get the U.S. off its back.
Right.
So that they can maybe go under the radar.
Okay, well, let's just reframe this and let's just say the two can move forward under friendlier terms. What are the areas where the U.S. and China need to find common ground, or at least reduce their tensions and quit antagonizing each other?
Yeah. Tiana, the solutions woman. I love it.
Oh, I'm not a solutions woman. I'm a panic woman, and you find the solution.
Well, okay. So you asked the question, so I guess that's perfect.
Yeah, like we're two halves of one person. I'm the one that freaks out, and you're the one who finds solutions. I lead on emotion.
I think so. Okay, can we get into that just a little bit, just real quick? Because here's I think not about China, about emotion and logic.
Oh, okay.
I think both of them need to happen.
Okay.
So I heard Andrew Bustamante talking about this, about how he wanted Israel to have a more logical approach to their retaliation towards Hamas.
Right.
And my response to that was, well, war is all about emotion. You don't go to war because you're logical. You go to war because you're emotional. Somebody did something to you, or you think somebody has something of yours, and you go to war. That's an emotional response. And I'm not saying it's negative. There are emotional responses that are very positive. There are logical responses that are very negative because it takes time to come up with a logical approach to something. That's the difference between the two. Emotion is a quick reaction. Logic is sort of over time figuring out the solution, and you need both of those. So that's why I think we work together really well, because you do have emotional responses to things, and it's the correct response at the time. And when I try to bring logic into it and try to take time to dissect the information, you're like, well, this needs to happen 2 minutes ago. So we've already failed, Kervin. What's your point? Yeah. And that can happen. If you sit back and wait and try to have a logical approach or a tactical strategic approach to something.
Or wait for the perfect time to implement.
Yep. Sometimes it's not the perfect time. Sometimes you need that emotion because that emotion gears you up.
Time.
But
sometimes there's no perfect time.
Your real question was, that common ground. And so that's like I'm going to try to bring a logical approach because we have the time to do it.
Yeah.
And there are several... We have a whole week until the next episode.
Yeah.
And there are several areas where the U.S. and China could work together to ease tensions. So first, obviously, economic matters. So if the two can get on the same page economically, that could help the entire world. Like, come on, people. Everything works on economics. So please find some common ground around there so we can all be good, right? I think the U.S. should avoid excessive concerns about China's economic rise. China, they're grappling with significant economic challenges. They have an aging population. They have high debt levels. The U.S. has high debt levels.
Yeah, our president literally asked for $65 billion for domestic matters. He finally decided to focus on domestic things. $65 billion that we don't have, but we're going to add it to the debt ceiling. It's fine.
I checked our bank account. We don't have it.
No, we cannot contribute. Well, we are contributing
us
with our taxes. What are you talking about?
Well, but like I was talking about, U.S. is, they're worried about China's economic rise, but there are limitations to how fast China can grow.
And why can't we all just be like, yeah, we're all growing. This is great. We're all figuring it out. We're all figuring out how to take care of our populations. We're all figuring out how to take care of each other. Why does it have to be a freaking competition? Why does there have to be somebody on top?
Tiana, I'm so much with you. Like, why can't we? It's the old statement, right? Why can't we all just get along?
Why can't we?
And I would say if you sat down with people from all over the world just individually, you would find out that you do get along with every single person. Even if you have differences on an extreme level, politically, religiously, anything, you can find common ground. Economics helps you find common ground. You're like, hey, I'm poor. Yeah, me too. I'm struggling. But moving away from economics, I think the U.S. and China should work in the realm of technology and innovation. Both countries should recognize their respective strengths and cooperate when it's possible.
Right.
Now, China has made significant strides in some technology sectors, but the U.S. maintains a lead in areas like, this might be surprising to people, artificial intelligence, the U.S. has a lead. Quantum computing, the U.S. has a lead. And then finally, the issue of Taiwan, that remains a contentious point. That's going to be the point that gets the two global superpowers at war. Both the U.S. and China need to explore ways to prevent a dangerous escalation.
Well, we both definitely stand on the side of preventing conflict. We already have enough conflict going on right now. So let's hope that these two superpowers can find some compromises. Quit drawing so many hard lines in the sand. Compromise. Let's go back to the terrorism conversation again. And last we discussed how terrorism was back, as you said, on the last episode.
Right.
And if that's true, I think you should give some insights into what to look for and how to keep yourself and your families and your friends safe in case of a terror attack. And as people who live near DC, within 30 miles of DC,
yeah, we are struggling with this, right?
Please tell us.
I think struggling is a good, yeah.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it paranoid, but I'm hyper aware. I'm hyper aware.
That's a great one.
Of where we are on this country. In Iowa, I wouldn't care. In Oklahoma,
in Baton Rouge,
probably. In Baton Rouge, you said?
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Well, in Baton Rouge, yeah, nobody's going to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, if you're in Baton Rouge, no, I'm just kidding. If you're in Baton Rouge, you could listen to this as well. Because
we do have people from Baton Rouge who listen to it, because I have seen plenty of Tiger fans.
Listen.
Plenty of Tiger fans on our followers and stuff. So we do have some Baton Rouge people. So hey, Baton Rouge.
Big weekend next weekend.
Baton Rouge used to mess me up. Tigerland used to mess me up.
But, you kind of said how I was kind of joking, or I guess it was terrorism is back, kind of a sarcastic remark. But terrorism is a persistent threat. It's not going away.
Yeah.
So to understand how to stay safe, so it's essential to keep an eye on emerging trends and potential threats, listening to this podcast, the newsletter that we put out, our Instagram account, following other open source intelligence accounts like Alcon Intel. That's going to help you understand what's going on in the world. And
you forgot Rickynomics.
Definitely the Rickynomics.
Yeah.
Incredible job. Yeah.
Rattle them off.
I don't want to just do one or two accounts, but if you go onto our Instagram and look at who we're following as far as like geopolitical accounts, those are some good ones to follow. You can always ask what other accounts to follow.
Yeah.
That's a start.
Yeah, we don't want you to just listen to us either.
No.
You need to listen to other open source geopolitical accounts as well, not just us.
Yeah, that's not something you're going to get from the Washington Post.
Yeah.
We don't want you just listening to this. If you want suggestions for other podcasts to listen to that I listen to, or that Tiana may listen to that deals with geopolitics, please ask. I will send those to you.
Right.
I would say that the one thing we should always look out for is the evolving nature of terrorism. So it's no longer just these large coordinated attacks. I know we just saw that, but those are few and far between, right? 9/11, this attack, there has not been a large coordinated attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. Those have been thwarted.
Right.
So what's going on now is lone wolf attacks coupled with online radicalization, and that's what we need to worry about. Those have added a new dimension to terrorism. So staying informed is key. That's why we do this podcast. That's why we like to promote other intelligence-based accounts. Pay attention to official alerts and news sources. I want to say official, so the U.S. government putting out, the Canadian government putting out official alerts. Wherever you're living, when they're putting out official alerts, those official news sources, read those. Also be cautious of misinformation. Don't go on social media and because you've followed this account for a while, it must be the truth. And that includes our account. You should scrutinize what we're putting out. I will say, maybe I shouldn't say we love to see the criticism that we put, but I take that to heart and we do better. We do try to do better.
Right.
So don't take just what we say. Source it out.
So we're also not trying to cause any unnecessary panic.
No, and we're not. And that's so a little bit of behind the curtain is I will come up with stuff and tell Tiana, hey, this is a new post. We got to get it out. And if it is something that is worrisome or something that could cause panic, we have to have a conversation about that. She needs to identify the sources so that we kind of go. So that's the analysis of competing hypotheses, which is ACH. That's something within intelligence. And that's something Tiana and I do so that we're not causing panic. So do those official alerts. Don't look at misinformation because that's going to cause unnecessary panic.
But also look at several trusted sources and kind of pull your information and draw your conclusions from there, because everything that aligns among these accounts, that's probably where the truth lies.
Yes.
All right. Well, time after time, when a lone wolf attack occurs, the media will interview friends and neighbors about the attacker. And the constant response is, they seem so quiet, or I never would have imagined they could do this. So how do friends and neighbors identify potential or radicalized individuals?
So there's a few things to look for. I'm going to list off 3 things. Sudden isolation, extreme changes in beliefs, and online affiliations with extremist groups. Now that last one, that's a dead ringer. If they're affiliated with extremist groups.
But also, how does like a regular civilian try to find out that their neighbor might be affiliated with extremist groups? How do you discover that sort of thing?
Okay, I am going to get into that. I promise you.
Okay,
that's a great
later?
question.
Is that later?
Yes.
You're going to talk about later? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, we will address that later. Okay.
None of these. So I've mentioned 3 things, right?
Right.
And none of them
sudden
should be
isolation, extreme changes in belief, and online affiliations with extremist groups.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like you said, online affiliations with extremist groups, I said it was a dead ringer, and you had a great comment for it. So how the heck do you know that someone's affiliated with an extremist group?
Yeah. I don't want to go searching for that. I don't want that on my Google search.
Right. Yeah. Is Curvin affiliated with an extremist group? And if you would have seen that in 2012, that might have popped up as, yes, Curvin is affiliated with an extremist group, because I was on a list.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't want to go down that
before.
Yeah, we've talked about being on that travel list. By the way, that is no joke, guys, being on the no travel list.
Don't get yourself on that.
Every time we go actually still to this day, Curvin will be pulled aside when we go to Europe and we're coming into a country. He's always taken away from us for I don't even know how long. Sometimes it's like an hour. Sometimes it's a couple hours.
Yeah.
But they always question him. He's always pulled to the side. It's real.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. Because we're not on that list anymore. And they're not going into my suit. Like, I didn't even do anything. I didn't have any affiliation with the military other than, you being in it. And they would just open all my stuff and dump it. They dumped my daughter's formula all over the inside of my suitcase.
Just because your husband...
And opened our shampoo and poured and didn't close that either. It's like they thought we were part of a terrorist group or something, and they were just like, I'm not even going to bother closing this stuff. So my daughter didn't have her special formula that was $120 a can because she had a really bad reflux, and the really important shampoo that she needed for her cradle cap all over my straightener and everything. I know I'm complaining about something.
And all because your husband was affiliated with an extremist group.
Well, not on purpose. Not because he wanted to be.
But we can't see these things in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
You're right. Like, oh, this person's isolating themselves. They must be planning something. You and I are...
ourselves for 2 years.
That's what I was just about to say. You and I are very well aware of the reasons people isolate or change beliefs, right?
Right.
That alone does not...
Of your family.
Right.
Over and over and over again. That's what helped us made us isolate.
So we need to foster an environment. And you would ask how... That was your question. Well, how do I know if someone is affiliated with an extremist group? We got to have conversations, guys. Face-to-face conversations with our communities. We need to foster an environment where we can openly discuss these issues and not stigmatize certain people or communities.
I mean, you say that, but if you you're saying we need to be face-to-face and have conversations with people, such as people that we think might be isolating themselves or aligning themselves with an extremist group. They're not going to want to tell us. Because they're going to know that we don't stand on that side and we would look down upon it.
And so
It's not
that's
about
the point.
Stigmatizing or anything. It's just we don't believe.
Yeah.
We don't believe in extremist groups, and there's no way that, I mean, I'm judging you. I will judge you if you are an extremist group like that. I will.
So
that's just how it is.
I say that because that's how you figure out if they're part of an extremist group.
By having a conversation.
Sit down and have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
because they're just going to do the extreme, then you kind of identify. That doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to go to the police and say,
Right.
I think these people, but it does give you caution to say,
So you're
okay,
saying pretend?
I'm not saying pretend.
That you're willing to listen to their diatribes?
No. I'm not saying,
what are you saying?
Pretend to listen to what they're trying to say. I'm saying have a conversation. If they're not willing to have the conversation because they're stuck on their side and they're saying things like, Israel should be destroyed, or Palestine should never exist, or the U.S. is the great evil, or you don't belong here. Those people, if you hear those people don't belong here, those are some red flags to start saying, okay, I'm wondering what this person's intent is.
It's really funny, people in America having that hard line.
When none of us are from here but you?
When nobody is, I'm not even all of me is from here. Like, I'm not all Native American. I've got, like, plenty of white in me. My daddy was white. So, I mean, it's just kind of comical that people draw that hard line. They shouldn't be here, and they shouldn't be there. And
that's not even just a U.S. issue.
Here in U.S., like, it's so many people in the U.S., though, being like, Israel shouldn't exist, and Palestine has the rightful claim to that land. I'm like, okay, so why are you still here? Why are you here? If we have to go back, the thing is cultures, as the world expands and everybody's worldview expands, cultures move, and we blend together, and we form new cultures. And I mean, obviously, hold on to your original culture as much as you possibly can. But I mean, still welcome other people into the fold. You should be happy and grateful that other people want to live around you. And also the people who are claiming in America, the people who are like, Palestine, kick out all the Jews. They're like, open the borders in America so that people can come in. People from Mexico can come in as much as they want, or Central America, which I'm all for. I don't care about that. Please, the more the merrier. But I mean, I don't understand how people are drawing these hard lines like that.
Well, it's all based, we talked about it at the beginning. It's all based off of worldviews, and that's political or religious, or the combination of the two.
See, I just recognize the world is changing. It's not going to stay the same, no matter how much we want it to. Like, I mean, it sounds like nice in theory, but we're all blending together and we're all joining together, and I don't understand why that's a bad thing.
It's not. I am going to say, from my perspective, it is not a bad thing. I appreciate, so as somebody who loves history, we both love history a lot.
Right.
So I love the traditions that were started in every single religion.
Right.
These traditions that have been passed on from family to family is great, and you should hold on to those traditions, but also you should grow and you should be influenced by other traditions.
Yeah, you have to interact with other people from other cultures.
Future generations should be impacted by all the cultures around them. That's what's so great. In America, in the U.S., we get a lot of flack for those kind of things, saying, go back to your country. And there are people in the U.S. that will say that. Go back to your country. Go, if you go back wherever. And you're like, well, I was born here. This is my country. That's the first response, right? But the other thing is, why? Don't go back to your country. Stay here. I love you here. Yeah. If you are from Nigeria, I love you being here. If you are from China, I love you being here.
That's what our kids say about this area all the time, is they love how they're able to interact with people from all over the world, just in our neighborhood.
Yep. It gives you different perspectives on the world.
Right.
If you stay in your little town that you live in, now I know.
You've got very narrow beliefs.
Yeah, everyone that listens to this probably does not do that. They've traveled the world. They've gone all over. But if you're listening and you stayed in the town that you live in, not even a town, there was that, if you remember that news thing we saw in New York where somebody had gotten stabbed and they interviewed a kid. He was like 16 years old.
When we were in New York, yes.
And he said, if you have lived in New York your whole life, get out. And that was I was so impressed with that. It's so true. No matter where you live.
You've got to experience other worldviews and other cultures and appreciate them, because every single one of them have a right to be here.
Yeah.
And
listen, if you are an individual human, you have a right to exist on this world. That's just a fact.
Yes. Yep. And it's never going to go back to the way you wanted it to be. That might be the way you want it, but the world changes. It's going to continue changing. And
for better or worse.
For better or worse, you need to get ready and accept the change.
Yep.
So, and that's just us preaching to you today. We are done, though. We are done with the church of whatever the heck that was.
Do you have any other questions there?
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted. I know it's such a hippie
It's
point
important.
of view. It's a hippie point of view. Well, that's what a lot of people are going to think. They're going,
Comment on Spotify.
Comment on Spotify and tell me how I'm wrong. I don't care. Anyways, so keeping yourself, back to the terrorists. Yeah, back to the topic of possible terrorists in your neighborhood. So what about keeping yourself and your inner circle protected? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, so that's listen, we know this. It relies on personal preparedness. We did this in North Carolina, right?
Right. But we had to do that for a different reason. It's because you were gone more than half of the year every year. Like, it was me and the kids.
You have me back, and we still have this family emergency plan.
We do.
We know what to do in the case of an attack. Those are vital things. So
I'm not gonna lie. We just watched Fast X or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And how Michelle Rodriguez went into her son's room and said they're unwanted guests, and the kid knew exactly what to do right then.
Yeah, that's how it should be in your household.
Yeah, we have a key phrase for our family too, but I'm not going to say that. So
exactly. Mind your business. So I'll do things that I always talk about, Tiana. You can zone out because you've heard all of these things.
All right, bye. See you guys later.
So have escape routes. That's big. Have communication methods that are both digital and analog, because in the case of an attack, especially like a nuclear attack, digital devices are going to go. That's going to be gone. So you're going to need analog. Right. And then you have to have essential supplies ready. We're not talking about being a prepper, although that is fine. If you are a prepper, you're great. You have these supplies ready. But having essential food, having essential devices for 3 to 6 months, those are key. They can provide valuable resource. So what we have seen, like especially in the Israel attack, people who had a plan in place in those recent attacks, in addition to that personal preparedness, they were able to understand the situation and protect themselves. It's also essential to engage with law enforcement agencies and community organizers. They provide valuable resources on what to do in case of an attack. They also have channels for reporting suspicious activity. We see it a lot in D.C. You're not going to be surprised by this. All the signs say, if you see something, say something.
Report it. Yeah.
That's definitely right out the books of the military. If you see something, say something. Even if it's something innocuous, right? Just like,
somebody leaving a box somewhere.
Right. That doesn't mean
Walking
the
away from
cops
it.
are going to run out and go shoot that person. I would hope not.
Oh my gosh.
But it means that there's going to be a heightened awareness in that area. And it could save somebody. Now, when I spoke with USA Today about Homeland Security, my main suggestion for protecting...
I'm sorry, 1 second. Did that ever come out?
They're still working on it. I may have gave them too much information.
July. It was July.
I may have given them too much information.
It was supposed to come out in July. You got interviewed in like February.
Yeah. There is a lot, and it'll come out pretty soon.
Did they talk to you recently?
No. But I'll contact them and see what's going on. But what I said was to engage with law enforcement agencies, but most importantly, engage with your community organizers. Those people can provide valuable resources. They often, can tell you what to do in a situation, and that can help you plan. This is why I find it more important in the U.S. to vote in local elections. Vote for your mayor. Definitely vote for your sheriff. If you don't like what your police department is doing, you need to find a new sheriff.
Right.
Vote for that person, because that's an elected official. Your city council is an elected official, but don't just vote for them. Go to your city council. They'll have meetings. Speak up. If you don't feel safe, speak up. Those are the people that will do more to protect you than the federal government's going to do, because they're not affected by your personal stuff.
This is why I wanted to ask the question. The more we understand the risks and work together, like you said, on a local level, go to your local elections, people. I know they're coming up all over the place. The better we can protect ourselves and our loved ones. It's a very complex issue, but I think we both agree individuals can make the difference.
Yes.
So thank you, Kervin. I know that's not all for this week, so I'm just going to flat out say we have a very special guest returning to our podcast in November. But it'll be posted in December, right?
Yeah, it's going to come out in December. We're going to do it in November after we do some travel.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So also in November, the Military Influencers Conference is coming up. Kervin and I will definitely be there. It is confirmed.
Yeah,
and
we have flights, a hotel, and tickets. We are there.
And we get to see Andrew Yang. And that makes me really happy.
So if you are contemplating whether or not you should go to the Military Influence Conference, you don't know. I don't know if anybody's going to be speaking for me. Mm-hmm. Andrew Yang is going to be there. Mm-hmm. He is doing a speaking engagement on Thursday. I can't wait to meet him. This is somebody that I really respect. We don't agree on everything.
Right. But we still were trying to vote for him in the primaries. We did vote for him in the primaries.
We voted for him in the presidential primaries whenever he was...
running for president.
Yang. I think the guy is very smart. Like I said, we don't agree with everything, and I think that's beautiful. I think it's great that we don't agree with everything, and I still would vote for that guy.
Right. I mean, that was the same way we felt about Mitt Romney. So many people made fun of us because of that.
Look at that guy.
A lot of people made fun of us because of that.
Time tells you.
And he did not align with our political beliefs back then either. We just thought, he understood that Russia was going to be our next big...
that was the big statement, right?
Our big adversary, yeah. And then he was made fun of. He was laughed out of there. And then he also talked about how we were going to have another recession, which we have. And he talked...
with Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang said the same thing.
Yeah.
He said if we don't fix our economy now, we're going into a recession, which is what we're... which is what we're doing.
This is what we're doing.
But
we do not agree with everything with all of these political candidates, but it's the person that aligned most with us. Yeah. And also the fact that Mitt Romney quit this year.
They say he's getting too old. And go look at that guy.
Yeah.
Does he look like he's too old?
Well, I mean, he respects and understands and sees what's going on with our aging Congress and Senate and
But you also
President.
you also brought up we have a special guest.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Let's go back. So we have a special guest who is returning to our podcast. He'll be here he'll be interviewed in November, but it will be put out in December. You need to talk about him. You know him. I don't know him.
I am so
I don't know
excited.
him.
What can I say about this guy? He is former CIA, but he has influenced a lot of me. He does. He was just tapped to do the President's Daily Brief. If you're in the intelligence community, you know what the President's Daily Brief is.
And that's amazing.
You give it out. So this is a podcast that just gives you just what we do on a weekly basis, but on a daily basis. And I actually put out the comment to him. I said, "Is this the chicken or the egg? Am I getting all my information from you, or are you stealing the information from me?" And I'm going to ask him that on the podcast so he can actually answer it, because we do align so much in the intelligence community. And that just helps me focus. It makes me appreciate that I am doing the right thing, and I'm not being the opposite of humble. I can't think of that right now.
Arrogant?
I'm not being arrogant that my analysis is the truth, but it is good to see that other people in the intelligence community. So I reached out to Mike Baker. We've been talking back and forth because he's doing the President's Daily Brief, and he said he would love to come back on because he came on after Russia invaded Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And so once Hamas did the attack on Israel, I thought it was appropriate that we would discuss that. He agreed, and he said he would forego a Joe Rogan podcast to do our podcast.
Stop it.
So that's going to happen in December. And if you're still listening to this, put that on your calendars.
Yeah.
Let me load up my calendar. That should come out. That will be December. Oh, this is a very impressive date that this podcast will come out.
Okay.
It will be December 3rd of 2023. We will do the final insightful inquiries of 2023. And I'm very much looking forward to it, and I know our audience would love it.
He was one of our one of the insightful inquiries episodes that people resonated with most.
Yeah.
Was his episode. So that's very exciting. And also, in case you didn't get what he was saying, that's my birthday. That's coming out on my birthday. So happy birthday to me.
Yeah, I think it's insightful inquiries, but it really will be insightful. And it's going to be fun because I don't have to say, hey, tell me who you are. Let's go through your history. We're just going to get into all the geopolitical information.
And also, if you do need that information, you can go back to his previous episode and they get into all that stuff. But he's
awesome. And he's genuine. He's really genuine. And so if you hear somebody come back on the podcast,
it's because Kervin likes them a lot.
And they're genuine. It's not because they're trying to promote something. He has nothing to promote, honestly. So,
and he's foregoing the Joe Rogan podcast to come on our little dingy thing.
Yeah. So
anyways, so we have lots of things to look forward to. Also, if you are going to the Military Influencers Conference in November, let us know. We can meet up.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be fun. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to add, my dear?
Nope. And I know you don't have anything else because you brought up the last there.
And also, I need to go start baking sourdough bread.
Always about the food.
It is always about the food.
What are we having tonight? Tell the audience.
Well, today we're having chorizo and potato tacos.
Love it.
For dinner. Yeah.
Taco Bell would never.
Well, they might one day, but just not yet. But I'm also starting sourdough bread because I have a sourdough starter that I made myself, but I bought an older sourdough starter. It's like a 900-year-old sourdough starter from Jerusalem, and I'm not talking about the price right now, but it smells so good.
Fabulous.
Like Madeline, our eldest daughter, who sourdough bread is one of the only things that she will eat every single day. She loves sourdough bread. And she's been that way since we lived in California. And whenever I worked at a kitchen that fed homeless people, we would get, and a food pantry for people, underprivileged people, I would always get these big loaves of San Francisco sourdough, which, you know, San Francisco is known for their sourdough. That child could eat like half a loaf if I just left her there. And she was only about 3. That child was nutty. So anyway, she's very excited to try this new...
Sourdough is good for your gut.
Yeah, it's easier for your gut to... Oh my God, we're not going down that. It's easier for
your gut to digest, yeah.
To digest. Sorry. We're going down a tangent. So there's nothing else, right?
No, wrap it up. Let's go.
Okay. Oh, yeah. We've been running our mouths.
This might be the longest podcast we have done.
No, we have a lot of things to cut out. But anyways... Thank you.
Don't tell them my secrets.
That's okay. So thank you so much for listening to our humble little independent podcast. We hope that you found it both informative and engaging. But if you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, please let us know. And if you would like in-depth coverage of these stories and more, follow us on Instagram at Oakland Analytics.
Tiana, I know I say this every week, but seriously, thank you so much for being a part of this, asking the tough questions, keeping me on point. And until next week, to all of our audience, stay safe out there.